It is the glory of the members of the violin family that they excel in spinning music lines with a matchless variety of colors and shades. Combine this with their aptitude for brilliant virtuosity, and you have a limitless range of expression to explore. But one cannot hope to realize this rich potential until one has learned to chart the unmarked expanse of the fingerboard, so that an experienced player knows as readily as a pianist seated before the keyboard where every note is to be found, and until one has made the bow a wholly organic extension of the right arm that permits the production of short and sustained sounds, of delicate and powerful ones, combined and modulated at will. To take the first steps toward meeting this challenge from the cellist's viewpoint, we shall attempt today to make some fundamental decisions on how to seat ourselves and place the cello and hold the bow. These decisions will be governed by two main considerations. First, obviously, we shall have to prepare ourselves for obtaining satisfactory musical results. Second, our means must be economical. When we think of cellists having to play as members of an opera orchestra, a matinee performance of Aida, followed by the Meistersinger in the evening, as happened to me at the Met, or performing several of those demanding Bach suites in a row, or a string of closely spaced recitals, and of their labors through many hours of daily practice, year in and year out, they simply will not be able to stay the course if they do not know how to avoid tensions that are unnecessary, if not outright stifling to mind and body. Cellists are athletes before they can hope to become artists, and like all athletic activities, cello playing involves some inherent physical stresses that need to be watched carefully. The usual danger spots are the neck, the back and shoulders, cramping in both thumbs, and the resultant tendonitis in the forearms. We must therefore take good care of our bodies to be ready for the great physical demands of our profession. It may be helpful to engage in all those sports that do not make us muscle-bound or jeopardize unduly the safety of our precious hands. I recommend such non-contact activities as swimming, tennis, ping pong, skiing, golf, walking and running, plus a regular diet of exercises at home. Many people have found it very helpful to explore the principles of the so-called Alexander technique. You can find an explanation of the fascinating theories of Matthias Alexander on body dynamics in several books currently on the market. Among them is one by his confidant and relative Wilfred Barlow. It has been published by Alfred Knopf Incorporated and as a paperback by Warner Books. Personally, I like a program of yoga and exercises called Relax and Stretch by Ruth Simon, published by Collier Books. I think it contains everything cellists need to get into shape and remain fit if they are smart enough to keep it up. There is no denying the fact that cello playing involves a considerable expenditure of energy. The point is not to avoid the necessary effort by remaining forever relaxed and limp like a rag doll, but to be able to return resiliently to a state of ease whenever the need for exertion subsides. This emphasis on comfort and freedom should manifest itself right away in the choice of a chair. In accordance with our build, we should select a height that will keep the thighs level and permit the full soles of both feet to rest on the floor. If a suitable flat chair is unavailable, I ask for a piano stool that can be found most any place where music is performed. It will be adjustable in height and firm and flat, and I'm anyway not in need of a back In case you cannot avoid using one of those monstrosities that are tilted backwards, all you can do is to perch on it as far forward as possible to avoid a dislocated pelvis. On a suitable chair, sit erect and comfortable, and no matter how much you move about during the performance, be ready to return to the original relaxed position whenever possible. You will subject yourself to all kinds of aches and fatigue if you slump in the waist. Cellists should never bend from the waist and use it only sparingly in circular motions. On the other hand, feel always free to sway from the hips to sustain your sense of mobility. I do not like the feet to be placed on tiptoe. In times of stress, this can result in a disturbing tension in the legs. And hiding them under the chair or wrapping them around its legs throws the body forward and upsets its balance. With the height of the chair properly chosen, the feet can be put in any number of places that are convenient for cello playing, solidly but not riveted to the floor. Again, mobility must be preserved. We are now ready to position the cello. Except for spreading the legs, we must in no way make room for it. Strain away from it, discomfort ourselves to accommodate it. It simply has to go where we are not. Let us not imitate that unfortunate Trojan priest Laocoon, about to be strangled to death by a sea serpent sent by a vengeful goddess. He has good reason to agonize. I hope that cello playing holds no such threat for us. I suggest that we do not determine the position of the cello by first placing the end pin, but instead fit, to start with, the cello's lower right tuning peg into the hollow that you can find underneath and behind the left ear. Let me emphasize to start with, because the peg certainly does not need to remain glued to this spot, although I like sometimes to hug the cello this way, to move in harmony with, for instance, one of those heavenly Schubert melodies, like this one from the string quartet in G major. But, hugging or not, a desirable relation will have been established between the left arm and the fingerboard, irrespective of the size of the player's torso. One will neither have to reach down to first position, which often results in an awkward concave bending of the wrist, nor up too high, like a double bass player, which also crowds the right arm. The end pin can then be adjusted according to one's preference for a steeper or flatter position of the cello. Remember that you should still be completely at ease. Securing a stable position for the cello must involve no strain. To the two contact points of the cello, at the chest and the end pin, I would like to add only one more at the left knee. That will prevent it from slipping when an often desirable leaning to the left takes place. This occurs, for instance, when a forceful attack on the C string is required. The beginning of the concerto by D'Albert could be an example. I find it unnecessary to ride the cello by exerting pressure from both legs. The contact with the inside of the right calf or knee can be very light. In this way, we shall neither mute the vibrations of the cello nor have any latent tension in the legs. Factors determining the exact tilt of the cello laterally and vertically are for me, with regard to the left arm, the unstrained ability to play minor thirds on the outer strings in first and fourth position. And the ease of gliding from one end of the fingerboard to the other without changing the profile of the left arm from elbow to knuckles. The body of the instrument should present no obstacle whatever in traveling between low and thumb position. As to the right arm, I look for the ability of the bow to move at the right angle to the A string from frog to tip, and naturally to stay clear of trousers or skirt on the C string. In order to play at the tip with ease, very small persons will benefit from a sharper angle between the axes of body and cello than is usually the case. In any event, the cello neck should never rest on the player's shoulder. One should be able to fit one's fist in between and feel that the fingerboard is in front of the player, not drooping to the left. Let us take another look at the photograph of Casals that I showed you last time. It represents to me an ideal position in repose, uncramped, relaxed, ready for all tasks of both arms. There's no question that it worked extremely well for him. On the other hand, it is quite possible that some mature players can be very successful with their own idiosyncratic solution to the problems of cellistic position. Sometimes, perhaps successful in spite of rather than because of it. But I heartily recommend to students to follow Casals' classically balanced model. Young bodies may tolerate unsound practices for a while, but sooner or later they will have to pay the piper with aches and pains that may have been avoidable. Among these abuses, one has to count sudden spurts of practicing many hours when the body has not been in training for the rigorous demands of concentrated work on the cello. Now, for taking hold of the bow. Many theories confront us here. In offering you mine for you to experiment with, some of the justifications will have to await the discussions of specific bowing problems. But in a general way, this is what I expect the bow to accomplish. First, it must at all times be free to exert any amount of pressure on the string, including no pressure at all, so that it is neither helplessly stuck in rosin nor floundering above the string when an incisive contact is necessary. Not captive, not swishy, but in some cases into and out of the string on every stroke. Only then can we balance the touch and the speed of the bow. If I am always to be free to establish or sever the bow's contact with the string, it cannot depend on a continuous support from underneath. Rather, it is to be lowered onto and lifted from the string as an attachment to the right arm. I like to think of the bow as an integral, inseparable part of my physique, joined to the right hand in the same permanent, effortless way that the arm extends from the torso. I don't worry that my arm may drop from the shoulder. Likewise, only an act of violence could wrest my bow away from me. But the secure ownership of so light an object as the bow can surely be guaranteed without any basic need for hard clutching. There are many other human activities where the flexible use of an extension of the arm accomplishes specific tasks. Applicable to cello playing might be the sweeping motion of the tennis racket, as in Brahms' Fourth Symphony. The swift sting of the ping-pong paddle, as in the Sinfonia Concertante by Prokofiev. The smooth casting of the fishing lure, as in the Lalo concerto. The infinitely variable intensity of paintbrush meeting canvas, each stroke brushed out, permitting no globs of paint, as in the Bach Allemande in C major. The precise ring of hammer hitting metal, as in the Schumann concerto. The deft thrust of the foil in fencing, as in the Shostakovich sonata. Each of these tools is for the time being an inseparable part of the arm, and disturbing this unity of action utterly defeats the purpose of its use. Second, at the beginning of every stroke, we have to be ready to place the bow with a physical law in mind that states that strings vibrate best when the bow is set at a 90-degree angle. The correctness of the angle is to be observed and regulated strictly at the contact point of bow and string. This is where sound production starts, and total suppleness throughout the right arm must assist us in re-establishing the right angle at every new stroke. Third, the bow must now be able to set a string in motion, keep it vibrating with the requisite intensity and clarity for the time prescribed, and for an even sound, maintain a steady distance from the bridge. Before an awkward bow grip can frustrate the fluidity of our movements, let us test the path the bow has to follow. Place it on the middle strings at the tip. Hold it there with the left hand and drop the right arm onto the stick close to the tip. Now move the right arm fluently along the entire length of the bow and observe how the whole arm motion becomes a forearm motion at the downstroke and vice versa on the upstroke. If the setting motion is a sweeping one, I doubt that we shall run the danger of being left with an excessively high or low elbow position. One can truly say that an aesthetically pleasing, unbroken profile of the arm is likely to mean a direct and therefore mechanically sound transmission of power from the large muscles of the back to fingers, bow, and string. This is a wonderful exercise when practiced on all four strings, to let the smooth unfolding of the arm become second nature. And finally, how do we effect a fusion of the bow and the hand to facilitate all the above? The permanent ownership of the bow, the ability to start every bow stroke at the right angle, and to move the bow with élan and suppleness from stroke to stroke. If we attempted to decide on the bow grip when the bow is held with the right hand and placed at the frog, many positions would seem workable. If I practiced it, I could obtain quite acceptable results, I'm sure, this way. Or that. Or even that. But some of these choices would quickly lose their credibility as we began looking for elasticity and power and bow strokes of the string. A thumb held flat against the stick, for instance, would make bowing out all but impossible. So it seems more logical to me to determine the permanent bow hold at the farthest reach, preferably on the A string, where it is the most difficult. I think that the placement of the thumb should come first. It is the crucial finger for success. It ought to have a solid area contact. Nestling against, not on, the protrusion at the side of the frog, which there must be no sharp edge there that could hurt the thumb. File it down if necessary. Many players, including myself, wish to enhance the solidity of the touch by an extra covering here. I dislike the stickiness of some rubber tubing, so I use either surgical tubing with an inside diameter of 3/8 of an inch, which one can slip on with the help of some talcum powder, or thin plastic tubing with a 1/2 inch opening. You can heat it in the oven to make it more pliable before putting it on. Many well-functioning cellists, including Casals, have had periodic trouble with their thumbs. So a problem does exist, and we must watch it. The thumb should avoid rigidity by neither pointing at the stick nor being inflexibly pressed against the frog, not here, not there, not there. We must not lock the thumb. Depending on its shape, it may have a more or less convex profile. I say may because I do not favor a convex thumb when its tip is by nature very slender or excessively bent outwards. The thumb will have to do for the arm what the ball of the foot and the knee do for the leg, provide an elastic cushion when weight is applied. Like the knee, the right thumb will be basically straight but ready to be flexed when it is needed to support and refine the dead weight of the arm. More about this later. Every sensitive cellist uses the thumb in this flexible way. Nobody freezes it. Much more divergence can be observed in the use of the other four fingers. For my part, I'm guided by these principles. I want every joint in my right hand to be potentially flexible, forming an elastic system of springs. And power must be supplied to the string in the most economically way. With the thumb acting as a pivot, the best leverage can be obtained by the index finger being as far to the left of the thumb as possible. My desire for relaxed mobility precludes spreading my fingers to achieve this end. How far forward may I go then without losing the feeling of ease? When I drop my right arm, a relaxed thumb will fall about between the first and second fingers. As I pronate my arm, that means turn it toward the side of the index finger, the thumb moves readily to a location between the second and the third fingers. And that is the relation I adopt on the bow stick. We have already positioned the thumb. Now, by putting the first two fingers ahead of it, I obtain the necessary leverage and keep the desired closeness of all four fingers. Some cellists secure the bow hold mostly with the first and fourth fingers and use the middle fingers as ballast. I put more stock in the usefulness of the middle fingers as a fulcrum and assign to the fourth finger mainly its indispensable role as a balancing agent during soft strokes. For a live touch, I like to feel the stick in the first joints of the three inside fingers and let the fourth fall where it will according to its length. Future examinations will clarify why I entrust my third finger with a great deal of responsibility. Its pad nestles with an unforced permanence on the concave portion of the frog next to the metal ring. I find the third finger to be a marvelous stabilizer for all kinds of bow strokes, while I permit the little finger only an occasional squeeze at some up-bow attacks. A rigid fourth finger disturbs my image of the bow as an object to be handled with subtly changing touches, so it can produce an infinite variety of colors. Perhaps you thought in the beginning that seating yourself and positioning the cello and selecting a serviceable bow grip might be matters of no great import that could be disposed of in a few carefree minutes. I hope I have convinced you otherwise. Precisely because cello playing will become so complex at its later stages, we must start out with as much discipline as freedom, lest any initial awkwardness obstruct our progress toward cherished musical goals. At this point in our deliberations, we ought to be filled with a happy feeling of anticipation, relaxed and ready to explore, the body at ease, the cello accessible, and as we now own the bow, we have a faithful servant capable of carrying out our expressive wishes in all their diversity. It will be marvelously effective when it receives clear orders and a careful supervision. Left to its own devices, it will turn into a rampant sorcerer's apprentice, saddling us with clumsy, bumpy, flimsy, or scratchy sounds. But as we start part 3 of our series next time, we shall forestall all that and begin the investigation of what a really fine bow can do.